Welcome to Jawabu Talk. My name is Regina Wafula. We realize that there are many issues that affect the family. We have been discussing matters alcoholism and substance abuse and how it affects the family. Today, we change gears and start on a discussion that equally affects families and even can cause a family that was once united to totally disintegrate, leaving people affected psychologically, emotionally torn, and some even to poverty, succession. Our panelists today are wonderful women impacting the world positively in their profession and in everything that they do. So today we have Dr. Pamela Tsimbiri, an obstetrician and gynecologist. She is a widow. She'll share with us her story, a mother and now a grandmother. She's a woman of influence, power, resilience, and a mentor to many. We also have in our panel a prominent advocate here in Nakuru, Mrs. Winnie Muchela. I read her profile in the internet. She's doing an amazing job out there with her expertise and skills, and we thank God for her. We are all women who love the Lord, and we are committed to the cause that the Lord has laid to each one of us in our hearts. And to you, our viewer, thank you for being part of this worthy cause. And today I take the privilege to thank the people who've been making this happen. We have Rael Organist and we have Pastor Sammy. They've been doing an amazing job of recording, of editing, and we appreciate the work that they are doing. Now we want to welcome our panelists today so that we can strengthen the family bond. So, welcome, Dr. Tsimbiri. Yes, briefly you can tell us about who you are. I've just said a bit about you, so you can tell us a bit of details of who Dr. Tsimbiri is.
Okay, thank you, Regina. Viewers, as you've already been informed, my name is Dr. Pamela Tsimbiri Feather. I'm a gynecologist and obstetrician by profession. I work for Egerton University as a lecturer, but I'm also a businesswoman in town. I run a hospital called Joy Ellen Women's Hospital. So my work majorly is dealing with women, especially in matters of reproductive health. I'm a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 3. Thank you.
We have Mrs. Winnie Muchela.
Thank you, Regina. As you've heard, I'm Winnie Muchela. I'm a lawyer of the High Court of Kenya, and I'm a wife of one Aston Muchela Ongenge. He's also an advocate. So I'm a mother of 3, 2 boys, and one girl whom I'm trusting God for. She's called Naomi Nanga Ongenge. This is by faith. Naomi Nanga is my mother-in-law, who I love her so much. And as a result, we are trusting God that she will allow us to have this baby girl at his right time. I practice in the firm of Ashtiva and Company Advocates that is based both here in Nakuru and in Nairobi, Upper Hill and Gigiri. As a lawyer, I choose to serve God. I'm a born-again Christian, and I dedicate or devote my profession to glorify Him, especially on matters touching family and women and children. These are areas that are very dear to me, and it's an area that I can choose to serve at any time of the day with a lot of passion. And I trust that God will use me in this particular field, so that as I serve Him, many women and children will be able to know Him and to also be impacted in one way or another. Thank you so much, Regina, for having us here.
Okay. I told you we have amazing ladies today on board, so we are ready to be given insights on matters succession. So, karibu Dr. Tsimbiri, tell us about your journey in this life.
Thank you, Regina, once again. I've had a very long life. I'm not young. Currently in my mid-50s, and I'm happy and proud to be in that age. It comes with its own challenges. But today we're talking about the challenges and the stages I've gone through as a widow. And so I'll narrow my discussion to that. I was married to one Matthew Wangalia Wanyonyi, who was my age mate, and we were with him in college. We met in college. We got married in I'm forgetting. It's been quite a while. In 1988, that's when I got married. We were still in college then, University of Nairobi. I was in the medical school. He was an engineering student, so you can imagine the spark. It was quite live. Yes. The same year we got our firstborn, and I was married to Matthew until 1998. So that was for 10 years, when he passed on through a tragic road accident. It was a fatal one, so all the occupants of the vehicle died on the spot. It was a very sad moment. He had traveled up country. Actually, we had traveled with him up country. But then, since I was a student at the University of Nairobi, I was doing my master's, I left a day earlier by bus, and he was to follow the next day. Unfortunately, on his journey back to Nakuru, he met an accident at near Webuye, which was fatal, and all the 5 occupants in the vehicle passed on the spot because they were run over by a truck that was coming downhill. Later the next day, when I was trying to call him and communicate to him, it was difficult, until when my sister came, picked me in Nairobi, brought me to Nakuru, and that's when I heard the news. So my husband passed on 2nd of June, 1998. He left me 4 children, and the firstborn then, Rogers, was about 10. The lastborn was 1.5 years old. Since then, it has been a long journey. Before the passing on of my husband, we were living a very harmonious life as a family, a nuclear family, and even with my in-laws, my extended families, and even my personal family where I come from, in Kakamega. I got married in Bungoma. However, after the passing on of my husband, things didn't go very well. We did the burial arrangements quite well, although I got vibes during the burial arrangements that maybe there could be a tussle in terms of the site of burial. But when I asked my in-laws, they told me, no, there's no problem, in-laws, just let's continue preparing. So we had planned that the body would leave Nakuru at War Memorial, go to my father-in-law's home in Kimilili, that's in Bungoma. And at that time we had bought a parcel of land in Trans Nzoia, that is in Kiminini, where we had started our own constructions as a family. So we intended to bury, and that was his wish, according to our previous discussions, that he will be buried where we had bought a piece of land. However, after we transported the body to Bungoma, that's in Kimilili, the next day, transported on a Thursday. On a Friday, when I inquired what time we are leaving for the destination of burial, that's when I realized that the rumors I had been hearing that the body would not be moved were correct. At the same time, according to our culture, I was meant to go and get my parents to come for the funeral, officially now. And I also requested that I be given a vehicle to go with, because we had 2 vehicles, the company. My husband was working with Peretram Board. We had enough vehicles to take me back to my father's home to inform my parents. I was denied access to the vehicles. That's during that time. So 1, I've just been informed that the body is not living, and 2, to go to my parents' home, I have to go on foot to the nearest town, get a matatu to go and inform my parents. And I felt a bit frustrated. So for some reasons, after, it is still at our father-in-law's place. So at that time we got into some bit of argument with my brother-in-law, because he was the spokesman who had been giving me the feedback. He got annoyed and threw the car keys at me. So I said, fine, I'll take the keys, go inform my parents. But now I was in a predicament, so what next? How do I go about it? We have agreed on the burial side, all the arrangements have been done. So when I left the homestead, reached Webuye, that's when I decided, no, I may be in a grieving moment, but it's also good that I should not just let things go. Things should go as planned. And that's when I decided to seek for advice from the lawyers. So I went to Webuye. I could not get an appropriate lawyer, so I was informed that I can only go to Bungoma.
And all this time, Dr. you're all alone? You're with the children? Where had you left the children?
By this time, I had left the children in my father's-in-law's home at the funeral site. I was with one of my brother-in-law's wife. So we were 2, because when I got into the car, she also jumped in. So by good luck, we were 2. Since it was a tense moment, I was just driving. She was just seated at the back of the seat. I was just crying as I drive. Because you are there almost alone, and you're like, just thinking within yourself, what do you do? So I eventually decided to drive to Bungoma. The first 2 lawyers I met said no, they cannot engage in the case because they are relatives, they know the family. So luckily I met one who accepted to take on the case. Remember, it's a Friday and burial is supposed to be on a Saturday. So by 12, I was talking to this lawyer. The only evidence I could get was the newspaper advertisements we had done. I didn't have any document. I had just left it, not even with my pass or anything. So we had to go back to town to the newspaper vendors and get an old newspaper where we had put an advert to show that actually what I was saying is the truth according to the initial plans. So with that, he filed an urgent case, and we requested that then, because it will take time for discussions on the burial site, that the body should be taken back to the mortuary. After that, I went back to my parents. I left the lawyer processing the documents, the court processes, went to inform my parents because according to the custom, they cannot come to the site, to the burial site, without officially being informed by me. I went, I didn't even enter my mother's house. I told them I've come to fulfill the customary rights, which I've done. Left them there outside crying, and I went back to Bungoma because I was meant to be in court.
And this time it's just you and your sister-in-law?
My sister-in-law was just seated. She never left that car. Even every time I'm going out to look for a lawyer, she's just seated because she's confused, she doesn't know. We were not even having any discussion with her in the car. So by 5 we had the court order requesting that the burial be stopped until when the parties agree, and the body meanwhile be returned to Nakuru Memorial Hospital mortuary. Now, when we were going back home, then I realized what I've done may cause a lot of havoc. So we agreed that I arrive home first, inform my close relatives what has happened, which I did before the court server could arrive.
And that is on Friday?
That's on Friday. So by around 6, I was arriving in the homestead, told my close relatives that when I left in the morning, this is what I've done. I've gone to court to request that if they are not burying the body in Kimilili as we have earlier agreed, we return the body to the mortuary and then discuss.
So your family, they didn't follow you, you just informed them and you left to go to the lawyer?
Yes. They even didn't know I was going to the lawyer. I just informed them and told them I have other business to undertake. So then they went to the funeral. They didn't know what was happening. It's only later on that my father arrived at the funeral and was told that I'm not there, that he came looking for me and found me in Bungoma.
And then there were no mobile phones?
There were no mobile phones, so it was just by guessing what could have happened to this girl. So I informed my people once I arrived that I've been to court and the burial is not going to go on until further notice. Also informed them that knowing my relatives, they could cause some havoc, so maybe the best thing is for us to leave. And that's what we did. So we left, and I think like within 10-15 minutes of leaving, the court server arrived with the papers. So we had hardly gone far, like about 1.5 kilometers away from the home when the court server arrived. And at that time, people were mad. So they came chasing over us, were rescued by the police, and put in some safe sitting place in one of the hotels in town. Meanwhile, at the burial site, there was a lot of chaos, but the court server told them, even if you bury, the court process must still continue. So I think at night, after deliberations, they decided that no, they will release the body to Kimenini as earlier agreed. And that is what happened. At the burial side, I'm trying to cut many issues short. The next day, that is, now on Saturday, they were very wild. My in-laws were very wild. They were very, very wild, very abusive. All my relatives were chased away. My parents, my sisters, my cousins. The only close people I was left with were the people from Nakuru and Nairobi, friends. Those are the people I was left with, but I had no relative on site. We went ahead and buried my husband. And after that was court case after court case. That's how it was at that time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tsimbiri, for sharing. Sometimes some issues we don't want to share, but it's important to share so that somebody out there can find help and they can know that there's hope. Many are unfortunate because they do not have the know-how on what to do when such an event happens. And that is why we have Winnie Muchela on board today to give us insight. We'll continue engaging with Dr. Tsimbiri and Eunice as we continue with the conversation. So, Winnie, you've had the dilemma of that daktari, how she had to pause and start the court issues because of her husband. You've heard about Eunice. She never buried her husband, so to speak. So daktari was well informed to know what to do. Winnie, give us the legal implication of all this, Winnie.
I must begin by saying daktari, you must be a very courageous woman to be able to make such a firm decision on your own. And during that particular moment, when I know most of the time it's a sad moment, and perhaps your mind is not thinking well, and there are so many things running in your mind, and also having such young children, I can tell you, you're a strong lady. And I want to believe that perhaps even with that particular story, there must be one or two people who have learned something. Because one of the things that we always advise as lawyers, at times it's good to have that knowledge, because even the Bible says that at times we perish because of that ignorance. And I think that's why we're even using this particular opportunity to inform ourselves, because we know some of these things, even if they have not happened, they are definitely going to happen. And when we're informed, at least we'll be able to know what to do, like what daktari did. And one of the things that I would like to begin, especially to respond to daktari's story, is that matters to do with burial, the most important person who has a say is the wife. Okay. And that's why you can see that the court was able to grant you the orders. An order cannot be granted if you don't have a good case, or a case that can be supported by law. So that by virtue of you being the wife, you had that particular authority to decide and to determine and to direct how you want the burial to be done. And as a result, you were able to go to courts, and the court was able to give or grant what we call stay orders. It's an order that is normally granted even on that same day. I want to believe you applied on the same day, and most likely it was granted by 5, you stated. Yeah, so that even if you know the burial is happening tomorrow, or maybe even the same day, there are instances when you've had bodies exhumed, so that you'll tell them. And I know it's even most traditions, it's a taboo, it's against the rights to exhume a body, so that when they realize this is going to happen, a wise family will not proceed. And I think that's why they were wise enough. They must be learned people. They decided we'd rather not fight this wife, because we know she'll definitely defeat us. But I think at that time when they wanted to bury your husband against your wishes, they thought they'll be able to take advantage of the situation, and many a times that's what happens. So what is the solution to that? One of the things I advise women, even in just general forum, when the problem has not, it's not kicked home, is to ensure that once you've lost a loved one, it is hard, it is difficult, there is that mourning period that will happen, but it has happened. And your loved one, those children, those young ones, they are looking up to you. True. If you have a friend, most friends will do that for you. They'll come in for you and ensure they protect you, they surround you. But unfortunately, at times, just like what Dr. Tsimbiri mentioned, she was on her own. Or at times, even the friends will not know. So the solution, number one, when that incident happens and you realize that you are likely to face those hostilities, you just have to brave up as a woman. There's no other solution. Because you dare not, by the time you'll be realizing or coming to the reality, the mess will be already done. If it is that burial, it will have happened to the place or the location you did not want to take place. And for the rest of your life, together with your children, you'll be crying and wishing and saying, we were not able to enforce the wishes of the person I loved so dear. And do you know why this normally happens? I know many a times, especially in western areas and Nyanza, you find people fighting over potty. And one of the things is there's always an attachment of the body with the property.
True.
That you know, if you are the ones who had the rights for the burial, the next step will fall. And I'm sure maybe Daktari has not got it to the next step. But many people will say after that dispute with the burial site or location, the next thing is now after, what did our brother, what did our son on? And then they start coming after the property. So that if they succeeded in round one with the burial, you did not do anything, you are not aware of your rights, you do not get time to get a lawyer. So of course now be prepared for round two. And of course I can confirm it has happened in many occasions. Because you find during that mourning period, the mother or this widow will maybe want to take her mourning time for a year or so, even several months. But as I said, the reality is that activities are happening behind your back. So that the sooner you accept that it has happened, the sooner you accept that you are now the father, the one, your loved one is not there anymore, and you'll have to play both roles as the mother and the father. And of course, also I always encourage the women and young ladies by saying, doing that which your loved one will have wished you to do, to protect his family, even if it means coming against his people, which I think he will have done, because definitely he loved his children and he loved his property. And of course they were not doing that when he was alive, because he knew he will not have embraced it. So they're taking advantage of the situation. So there's nothing wrong in standing firm and coming against these people who are once in-laws, who are once relatives, and doing what is right. Actually, it's not a war, it's not a fight. For me, I just call it doing what is right and what must be done to protect your children. Because if you don't do that, you'll find after the dust has settled, you wake up, you find that properties have been sold, you find that decisions or ruling or judgments have been made in court based on what you did not do. Because there are instances where the courts will question, why didn't you protest when they stopped you from burying your husband? If indeed you are the wife, and of course it is expected that you should know that you have this particular right to protest and to object by going to court and getting orders. So that if you fail to do that, it's also you're building up a strong case for those other parties. And our courts, of course, they decide based on the evidence that they have.
Like what they did for Dr.
Exactly,
Tsimbiri.
what they did for your case.
The obituary.
You had to look for obituary. You must present something.
The grieving moment. You realize at that moment you are basically surrounded, especially for widows, especially where I come from, but I see that happening in many other places, that you are surrounded in such a manner that you cannot get out of that cocoon. Or even sometimes when be given a moment to think, yeah, or you are so grief-stricken that even the little time you have, you're just crying. You see, like you are in a different cocoon that doesn't allow you to do anything else. And that's one of the challenges that most widows will face. So that by the time that cocoon is being exposed, matters have gone, like my colleague, my friend here has said, the way now she was taken out by their relatives. So by the time you're getting out of that cocoon, so many things, as we are saying, have already happened.